Hey my good friend, Sam Haymart with Test Driven TV. Today we're test driving something pretty special in my estimation. This is the 2024 Land Rover Defender X Dynamic SE, and this of course is the 110 model. So I'm going to give you a pretty good walk around inside and out. We're going to take it for a drive, and then, well, I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to tell you what I really think. Okay, my friends, let's have a good look at what we've got here so that when we start getting inside of it and going for a drive, we'll have some context to fall back on. The Land Rover Defender, well, it's a legendary name. It's a legendary, iconic part of their product offering. It's been around for a long time, at least the first generations. And the one we have here is a 110 X Dynamic SE. And basically what that means is in the Defender lineup, it's the mid-size one. There's a shorter one that's a 3-door. This is a 5-door. And then there is a longer one, the Defender 130. This is the middle-size one. And in this trim grade with all of the options, and there's a lot of them, this one prices out at $88,000, give or take. And the one that they've given us here is a pretty common color scheme that I've seen out there, white with gloss black details everywhere. The packaging on this gives it extra gloss black trims that really give it some punch visually. Big black 22-inch wheels, these are optional. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is not what I would spec on this vehicle because I'd really want to do more off-roading and getting this thing muddy and dirty, and these are really more city slicker wheels, in my opinion. But I live in the city, out here in the dirt today doing our videos, the first time it's gotten dirty, if I'm honest. So these wheels would be perfect for probably most people to buy this vehicle. Now, the overall silhouette, very strong, very masculine, and all of the little details, you can really tell that this had a pretty good team of stylists working on it that brought the Defender style and DNA from the past into the future in a very new way. Very fashionable, I think. Now, this particular one here does have the air suspension, which enables it to raise quite a bit. You can do that manually, and of course, depending on the drive modes and the terrain system and all of the settings that you choose on that, it can automatically raise itself and it can lower itself depending on how you set that up. It has a lot of range on how low it can be and how high it can be, so it really allows it to be very versatile. And being the mid-size Defender, it really sort of puts it in the same size crosshairs as a Jeep Wrangler, which some could say it's a competitor to, and even at this price, you can spend the same money on a Jeep Wrangler, although it's a different animal, body on frame, a lot more rugged, where this is a unibody vehicle with a monocoque aluminum structure, a little bit more high-tech, a little bit more, well, some would say a crossover, but we're in the same size range, the same price range. This is also a vehicle that's going to be almost a direct competitor to the new Toyota Land Cruiser when it goes on the market. And we'll be test driving that probably a little bit later this year, and by then have a better idea of how these compare. While the view of the Defender coming at you, it makes it pretty distinctive and aggressive looking, I think this rear 3/4 view back here is really where it's at. This is the first way I saw the new Defender in person. I was sitting in traffic when it came out a few years ago, and this really got my attention, this nice chiseled form back here. And the way the body color and the black and the divide of the glass and the panels, everything comes together in a way that's very simple, crisp, yet has quite a bit of detail. The one we have here has a black signature panel, which is this panel right here that can be body color. There are a number of ways to customize it. It has the blacked out roof, so it makes it look like this whole top part, the cap, is all one form. And then when you combine it with the white and then the gloss black at the bottom, it really sticks out. Now, looking at the rear shoulder line, this is what I'm talking about when I say distinctive in detail. I love the way that corner is right all the way down. It wraps around the shoulder line, and then you've got those taillights, which appear to be just sort of molded right into that form. Well, because they are. And then you get down into the bumper and everything just comes together in a nice flush way, yet you have a bumper that's actually a real bumper back there to be used. Tow hooks in that bumper, and those can really take a lot of weight. And then note that the spare tire is hanging on that rear gate. not underneath the vehicle where you're gonna have to crawl underneath there to get to it if you're out in the mud, the dirt, the rocks. Because the spare tire is mounted on the rear gate, you have what is often a trade-off, which is the swing open gate. Now the way this one's made is it's all one piece. The rear glass and the gate are all one piece, so it feels solid and it's a one-step process. And you'll see down there it has a damper. Now, the reason I point that out is because this is well done. This operates very easily, opening and closing. You see how effortless I'm doing this? And I'm only saying that because I've had Jeep Wranglers and I've had Broncos that aren't nearly as easy to use as this. I'm looking at you, Bronco, in particular, and that's because of the way the dampers work on those. Sometimes they just fight with you all the way, opening and closing. And then you also have to, on both of those other vehicles, you have to open the glass as a separate piece. Here, it's all one. And I really kind of prefer that, if I'm honest, but this just works so much easier. Yeah, this is good. Up on the top, this does have the panoramic glass roof, and because it's black, it's sort of hard to see, but it does have the small iconic windows up here in the roof line, and they're kind of cute, you know, sort of a throwback to the old style. Not necessary anymore, but they do add a little bit of drama to the interior, add some extra light, and they're just kind of cool. The interior of the Defender is very much in line with a lot of the more recent retro modern SUVs like the Bronco, even the Jeep Wrangler to some degree. Here we have an interior that is bent on being utilitarian. It's got rubber floor mats, it's got rubber floors, there is no carpeting in this. The metal on the doors is real. If you look at the way these doors are constructed, this is not your typical Range Rover with leather and wood slathered everywhere, although you can get that here. This particular Defender is very basic inside, yet it has upgraded materials throughout. This is not cheap stuff. This is high quality materials everywhere your hands roam. And so looking around, it's got a very butch utilitarian look to it, and I like that. As I sit here, I'm sitting in leather seats. These are power adjustable, of course. The driver does have memory settings for these. They are heated, they are ventilated. I have a leather steering wheel ahead of me as well. Some nice controls on it. And ahead of that, a fully digital instrument cluster, which is customizable to some degree, but it has a very business-like look to it, very much like I would expect from Land Rover. Ahead of me also is an optional head-up display. The infotainment system here in the center, very simple, and then right here on the center console are most of the controls that you're going to be using for, partly for the infotainment system, but partly for the drive modes, the climate control, and a number of other things. And one of the things they've done is these two big knobs here in the center sort of double for a number of things. You press it to use it for the fan, you press it to use it for the seat controls, you press it to use for the drive mode. Not necessarily one of my favorite layouts, but once you learn it, it works pretty simply. The gear selector is an electronic toggle right here. It is a nice placement. I like that. And then the center console, very utilitarian. Down below, a nice big storage area, and it is just made of some quality, solid material. It doesn't feel cheap in your hands. It doesn't squeak or creak. It just feels like it's solid, and these are real metal grommets and real metal bolts holding this together here. And if you want it fancier, you can get wood trim here and in a number of other places if you step up a little bit in the way of options. Lots of ports and power ports, cup holders here, and this one has down in the center console the optional refrigeration, so it's a little bit smaller than it might be otherwise. It's about the size of a square tissue box, and that will keep your stuff cold down there. Here in the center is a wireless charger for your phone, and it can lay right there underneath this lid. This is just a nice setup, I think. It's comfortable, a very commanding seating position. It's very upright, not as much as you're going to find in a Bronco or in a Jeep Wrangler, but the view out is very good, and while it does have a pretty steeply raked windshield, it's not quite what you're going to find in those other vehicles I mentioned. Other things notable here are the large panoramic sunroof. It does have an opening front section, which is kind of nice. And most of all, it just gives us a nice airy atmosphere, and the treatment they've given the glass, you don't get a bake effect through it too bad, so it's got some good UV protection in it. The second row in the Defender 110 is actually a place that you can see has plenty of space for me back here. These seats are set for my height, about 5'8" with these shoes on. I've got about 5 to 6 inches ahead of my knees. If I had a very tall person sitting here, I would still be quite good. What I'm most impressed with in any SUV that I'm sitting in the back of is the seating height. I'm not sitting down, my knees aren't perched up. It's a very natural seating position, and it is relatively comfortable. Now, these are pretty flat seats, but they're comfortable, and the padding and the firmness is just right. And very much just like the front, this is very utilitarian back here. I've got a big rubber floor back here, which I love. I can get in and out of here with my dirty, muddy boots, not going to worry about ruining the carpet. And the trim on the doors, everything just feels solid. I love that. And so this big window above me gives me some airiness, as does the little side windows in the back, which are kind of cool. Now, these seats, they do fold down in a 60-40 split, as you'd expect. Actually, you can do a 40-20-40 split if you'd like. The great thing about these is that they fully go all the way flat, so that you can get a full flat load floor back there. And it's fully lined with rubber, giving you that utilitarian ability to really just put some dirty, muddy gear in this thing and not worry about it. You can truly use it the way they're marketing for you to be able to use it. And underneath that floor is some storage area for all of your goods and all of the little bits. This came with one of the packs that includes a lot of little goodies, which is cool. Even when everything's up, you can see that that cargo space back there is pretty sizable. And there's a lot of utility back there that you can see, not only in the way of power ports, but controls for various things. At the rear of the center console, some nice amenities, vents. I always love that, especially here where it gets to be 110 on summer days. HVAC controls down there. Now that actually is an option on this one, but down a little bit further, you can see this also has power ports for charging your devices. This is an interior that I just absolutely love. I just love it. Not because it's fancy, again, not slathered with wood and a lot of LED lighting and a lot of stuff that Mercedes typically overwhelms me with. I just love the fact that this is basic, it's versatile, it feels like a high quality piece of camping equipment, and there's just nothing cheap about it. The switch gear, the layout, everything has a purpose, and I just wish every vehicle was built and designed this way. And so, yes, it's plain for its price tag, but I love how well built it is. This interior gets 5 out of 5 stars, hands down. The infotainment system here is actually not the top of the line. This is actually the base infotainment screen, so it's not quite as large as you can get here, yet it is very fully featured. It has a Meridian sound system, though you can option that up for the full boat Meridian sound system. It has a good sound, satellite radio, AM, FM, of course, Bluetooth connectivity, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. It has all of the feature content that you want here, and it has navigation. It's got cloud connected services. And even though it is a smaller screen, I find that the graphics are good, the layout's good, and using it is pretty simple. Navigating around and trying to find the controls that you want when you suddenly think, I want to change this or I want to set that, it's there, the drive modes. And like most Land Rover vehicles, it's got some great screens that help you to really dig into what's happening with your off-roading and the four-wheel drive system, the terrain response system, and what your angles are. It's got all of those toys. And so if you like that, I prefer to sort of keep an eye out the window and know what's going on out there. But if you want to be watching the screen, it's got plenty to show you. The sound quality is pretty good, even though this is not the top of the line system. And the backup camera, well, it's actually a 360-degree view camera, and it works quite well. It is a little bit on the smaller side, not being the largest screen and system available here, but if you know where to look and what to look for, you can get used to it. It does have some customizable views. You can really dial in those cameras to some different ways of showing you that information if you're off-roading, which I like, and towing as well. So I'm impressed. Even though this is not the full tilt system, there's a lot of vehicles out there that have full tilt systems that aren't nearly this good. This gets 5 out of 5 stars. All right, my friends, let's go for a drive. I'm so used to electrics these days that when I press the button and it fires up, it's almost like, what happened? So what's under the hood? Let's start right there. This has a pretty interesting engine. It's an inline 6, which is really a nice thing that those are coming back, because an inline 6 is inherently a lot more smoother and more refined in its overall driving experience. It sounds better than a V6. And that's just because of physics. If you don't know why, Google it. There's a lot of information out there that explains why that is. It's why Mercedes-Benz went back to an inline six. It's why we have one here. It's why other car companies are going to it. It is a 3-liter turbocharged inline six. It has an electronically controlled wastegate for that turbocharger, but more important than that, it has an electric motor built into the turbocharger that enables it to spin up and avoid the turbo lag. So it can spin up on its own with the 48-volt system and be able to get up to speed and boost before the exhaust impeller would get it there. So very little turbo lag in this entire setup. It has 395 horsepower, 406 pound-feet of torque, and it comes mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission. And in this vehicle, it has a full-time 4-wheel drive system that is, for the most part, automatic, though you do have some controllability over it. So if you watch my videos, you know the question I always like to ask is, how does it go? So we're going to come to a complete stop and go. Woo! Got a nice sound. And 60. Listen to that. Oh, it just sounds so high quality. Land Rover says 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds, which is about what that feels like. You know you're driving a big SUV, but this is an engine that puts out the power, and it puts it out now. You mash the pedal, as soon as the drive-by-wire throttle body and the computer get it in gear and send you down the road, the power is near explosive. And so, was there turbo lag that you saw back there? No, that was drive-by-wire computer throttle lag. Once you step on the gas and go, this engine spools up and really nails it. And when you hit the pedal, off it goes. Listen to that. Woo. Oh, got a corner coming up. This is an SUV, not a sports car. So this is an engine that really fits this vehicle well. It feels and sounds its price, and that's good because there is a price tag here, and much more refined than some of the Toyota Turbo V6s I've tested in their SUVs lately, and certainly more refined than anything you're going to find under the hood of a Jeep Wrangler. So in a comparative sense, this is a very impressive powertrain, and you're certainly getting your step up cattle guard for the money. Now, what about fuel economy? Well, this does have an auto start-stop system that I don't really like, so I keep it turned off. So when it comes to fuel economy, this is rated at 17 city, 20 highway, and 18 MPG combined. Now keep in mind, this has a mild hybrid system, which enables this to get some extra torque delivered to the engine by help of the motor, the electric motor that is, but it also enables this to start and stop when that start-stop system is being operated quite seamlessly. So when it comes to start-stop systems, this works pretty nicely if you like that kind of thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Nonetheless, I got about 18 MPG with it this week, which is what the window sticker promised. And that was actually mostly city driving, so not bad at all in terms of efficiency. So from the standpoint of rating this powertrain based on its behavior, its performance, just what it's like to live with every day, I love it. I love the fact that it's got that inline six sound and feel. It's got a very immediate power curve when you really ask for the power, and all of it just seems to work together quite well. This powertrain gets 5 out of 5 stars. On the topic of ride, drive, and handling, let's first talk about what this is not. This is not the old Defender, which was a body-on-frame SUV, more built like a truck than a car. This is a monocoque body structure. It's based on the same chassis platform architecture that is shared with other Jaguar and Land Rover vehicles. And so some would call it a crossover, but this is a vehicle that is all one piece. It's not body on frame. And so because of that, it has a lot of driving characteristics. It has a lot of ride characteristics that are inherently a lot more refined than that of a body on frame vehicle. It is solid, it is refined, it's quiet, it feels like a brick. Not a real heavy one, because it does have a fully aluminum structure, which is kind of on the high end of things, Not very many vehicles out there built like this. Now, suspension-wise, it does not have solid axles like the old Defender. This has a fully independent suspension, and on this one, as we talked about on the walk around, it has the air suspension, which allows the ride height to be varied considerably depending on how you set the drive modes, how you set the terrain response, and how you set the suspension up. But let's talk about how it feels, how it drives, how it rides. It feels very refined. This is one of the most refined and stable feeling SUVs I've driven in a long time. It's quiet, 58.1 decibels on our 70-mile-an-hour test. Yeah, and these big tires and wheels really give it a nice sense of grip. Roll stability very good, and because we've got this adaptive suspension, it can stiffen up, it can lighten up when it needs to give you the best of all worlds. And again, depending on how you set your drive mode and train response up, it's going to behave differently. But you throw it into a curve and you get a level of, that was a cattle guard. You get a level of finesse and handling characteristic that you don't expect in a tall SUV, at least not most of them out there, certainly not a Jeep Wrangler or Ford Bronco. Steering has a nice direct light feel to it, and as I go over some of these bumps and a lot of the speed bumps and testing that I do living in the city, it passed everything with flying colors. There hasn't been a single time where I got rattles and squeaks in the chassis, any clunks, any sense that this chassis is anything less than robust. And that's important because you're buying a vehicle like this to really be able to throw it around and use it like a heavy-duty tool. And nowhere is going to tell us more about how that works than the washboard road. So in that way, it's when we get off the pavement that I can really sort of be a judge of how well put together this is and how well sorted this chassis is. And I'm just going to put it out there right now. We're not going to be doing any really in-depth off-roading because the way this particular Defender is set up with 22-inch wheels and street tires that are low profile, this is just not really the off-roading vehicle. I really want to find out how well put together this is, how did they tune the chassis, and does it feel like a big POS or not when we get it out here in the dirt. And I've driven some other Land Rovers out here that didn't impress me at all on something as innocuous as a desert washboard road. And so what I'm feeling is that this thing is very solid, especially for a unibody vehicle. This aluminum structure feels tight and the suspension feels well bolted together. Now, this suspension, both front and rear, is attached to the body structure with subframes. And so what that means is a lot of the harshness and a lot of what is coming into this chassis through the tires and wheels is being buffered by that subframe and rubber bushing. So what am I getting from that? Well, I'm getting a lot of refinement and a little bit of isolation from the roughest of what would otherwise be coming at me if that weren't there. And so I guess what I'm saying is this thing feels good. It feels expensive and it feels solid. And that's a good thing because it is expensive. You want it to feel like that. I'm not getting any rattling in the steering, in the suspension itself. Everything feels nice and tight. The ride quality is just quite good. It's comfortable. And the last thing I'll say is that the structure of this vehicle, I'm not getting any rattles and squeaks. I'm not getting a bouncing dash. The doors aren't shuddering in their frames. All of this interior fitment, all of this robust interior trim and everything we just talked about, not only is it solid when you're sitting in it and talking about it, but it's solid when you're going down a bumpy washboard road. So that makes this a nice ride and drive and a great chassis that I think is probably one of my new favorites. This chassis gets 5 out of 5 stars. All right, my friends, you've seen me gush all over this thing and score it really good. We've driven it not even that hard, and I've just really been happy with everything that this vehicle does. Have I anything negative to say? Well, not that many things, obviously, but let's talk about the price, the value, and is it worth it? $88,000 as tested, give or take. This is not the most you can spend here, but it is not the least. So there are a number of ways you can go. You can go a lot more, you can spend more, you can get this quite a bit cheaper. If you get a base model, maybe do the 4-cylinder. This is a vehicle that has quite a bit of range to not only how you can customize it, spec it, and build it, but how much you can spend. And first thing I'm going to tell you when I start talking about reliability and is it worth the money, there are a lot of people out there who I know who say, I'd never get another Land Rover in my life again. I have never spent so much money fixing an unreliable vehicle, blah, 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 blah. When people start talking like that about a vehicle like this, my ears turn off. And I'll tell you why, because this is a luxury vehicle. There aren't very many of them on the market that are reliable, that don't cost you a crap load of money. And the reality is, if you're spending a lot of money fixing an unreliable vehicle like this, you bought it wrong. You need to be leasing this, not buying it. You need to lease this for 36 months. You give it back, you throw them the keys before the warranty's up. That's how you do it. That's how you get a BMW. That's how you get a Mercedes-Benz. That's how you get a Range Rover and a Land Rover. It's just how you do it. If you have a vehicle long enough to start spending money out of warranty, you bought it wrong. You're doing it wrong. So I don't want to hear about all your complaints about how unreliable these things are. Just don't, right? There are a lot of airlines that would like their Boeing or their Airbus to be super reliable like a Toyota, but that's not how the world works with luxury, complex, high-tech, bleeding-edge tech things. So there's my spiel on that. Warranty, 4 years, 50,000 miles, and yeah, it's kind of average. It's a little bit better than some, but not as good as others. Do you need it? Probably. If you are going to buy this thing, you buy the extended warranty. It's probably going to cost you a mint, but you better do it. So I don't have to hear you comment on my videos about, oh my God, how much money I had to spend fixing my Land Rover. And I'm being tongue-in-cheek, but the reality is, it's just the nature of the beast. Would I buy it? Yes. I'm already going to skip a beat here. I usually save this to the end, but this goes on my I'd buy it list, so you can see where the scoring and the value is going here. I would definitely buy this for this price, and I'll come around to that here in a minute, but I put value at 5 out of 5 stars at this price tag. And when you put that in with everything else we've already talked about, we're at 5 out of 5 stars for the review. And yes, I'd buy it. And there's a number of reasons why. If I were spending close to $100,000 on a luxury SUV, this thing has impressed me more than anything I've tested in a long time. And I'm normally all over the big Mercedes-Benz SUVs. I like them a lot. I like their style, their quality, and just the whole thing there. But this one sings to a different tune. It goes to a different drummer. This is a rugged, well-built, solid tool in your hands, like nothing else out there on the market. Everything else sort of gets into this woodsy, leathery, high-tech place like Mercedes, even Lexus with some of their new ultra high-end stuff. This feels a quality. It feels well-built and solid in a way that nothing else I've tested in quite a while does. And that's why I like it. Even though it's basic with rubber floor mats, which a lot of people like, it has sort of a plain interior at this price. I would totally do it. And just to sort of put some context to that, and I know I'm talking long here, I just did a story on the new Lincoln Aviator for 2025, which you can spend $88,000 on, you know. A really loaded up Ford Explorer, you can spend $88,000, $90,000, $95,000 on. Why would you do that? Why would you spend Rolex money on the best watch that Walmart sells when you can get a Rolex for the same money? And that's why I look at this price and go, yeah, if I'm spending Rolex money, I want the Rolex. So there it is. It's that simple. It's that simple. So I hope you like the review. I have fun with these things because that's how I like to live my life. And you can see more of our reviews right there. You can see our latest video, but better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there and you'll see everything that we do. Either way, stay tuned.